Okay, let's be real. The crypto world can feel overwhelming, right? Thousands of coins, headlines flying around constantly. But what if I told you there's a simple way to get a clear snapshot of the entire market in just a few minutes? Today, we're going to build a really simple framework to understand this whole digital economy using just a handful of key numbers. And we're going to start with the biggest one of all. So, to really wrap our heads around this, let's talk about scale. The entire crypto market, all of it, is worth more than some of the biggest companies in the world, like Amazon and Google. So, what does a market that massive actually look like as a single number? Boom. There it is, over $3 trillion. Yeah, that's a mind-boggling, almost fake-sounding number, but trust me, it's the perfect starting point to begin mapping out this entire landscape. All right, so let's use this monster number to take our first snapshot. How do we even begin to make sense of a market this big? Well, whenever you're trying to understand a huge system, the first thing you want to do is figure out who's the big boss, or what's the most influential piece of the puzzle. Okay, so in charge isn't exactly the right phrase in a decentralized world. I get it. But there is definitely one asset that pulls most of the weight. Among the thousands and thousands of coins out there, which one takes up the biggest piece of the pie? And that would be Bitcoin. It makes up almost 59% of the entire market. We call this Bitcoin dominance, and it's a super important metric. Basically, what it means is, as Bitcoin goes, so goes the rest of the market. It's the tide that lifts or sinks all the other boats. This chart really drives the point home. That huge slice, that's all Bitcoin. And everything else, every other coin, every single project, is crammed into that little slice over there. It's a pretty powerful way to see just how foundational Bitcoin is to the whole crypto economy. So if Bitcoin is the undisputed king, who's the number two? Who's the prince? Well, that brings us to the two true titans of the crypto world, Bitcoin and, of course, Ethereum. Just look at these numbers for a second. Bitcoin is sitting there at a colossal $1.9 trillion. And then there's Ethereum, the solid number two, at around 400 billion. I mean, even between the number one and number two spots, you've got a $1.5 trillion gap. It's just staggering. But why? Why are they both so valuable? Well, it's because they're not really competing for the same job. They do fundamentally different things. Bitcoin was the OG, the very first cryptocurrency, designed to be a new kind of digital money. Ethereum came along later and it introduced something new, smart contracts. A good way to think about it is this. Bitcoin is like digital gold, a store of value. Ethereum, though, that's more like a global, decentralized computer that you can build stuff on. Okay, so we've got our two giants, but what about all that other stuff, the other 41% of the market? Well, my friend, that's where we dive into the wild, wonderful, and sometimes weird world of altcoins. And the definition? It couldn't be simpler. If it's not Bitcoin, guess what? It's an altcoin. The name literally just comes from alternative coin. And because Bitcoin's original code is open for anyone to see, thousands of different projects have popped up by tweaking it or building something totally new. And here's just a tiny taste of what's out there. You've got coins like BNB, Solana, Dogecoin, Cardano. The list goes on and on. And each one is trying to do something different, with its own tech, its own goals, and its own community, creating this massive, diverse ecosystem. So that's great and all, but how do these different coins actually work? How do they do stuff? To get that, we need to look at the tools of the trade. Let's call them crypto's building blocks. First up, this smart contract. Remember we mentioned this with Ethereum? Think of it like a vending machine. You put in the money, you make your selection, and the machine automatically gives you your snack. No cashier needed. That's what a smart contract does, but with code. It's the engine behind so much of what happens in crypto. All right, next up, stablecoins. We all know crypto prices can be a total roller coaster, right? Up one day, down the next. Stablecoins were invented to fix that exact problem. They're designed to hold a steady value because they're pegged to a real-world currency, usually the US dollar. And you can see exactly what I mean right here. These are two of the biggest stablecoins, Tether and USDC. And look at their price. It's always sitting right around $1. That's the whole point. And that stability makes them super, super useful for things like trading or just moving money around without having to worry about the price crashing. And last but not least, the one you've definitely heard of, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Now, yeah, they blew up because of digital art,
But the key phrase to remember is multi-use. At its core, an NFT is just a unique, provable certificate of ownership for a digital item. That item could be art, sure, but it could also be a concert ticket, an item in a video game, or even the deed to a house. Okay, so we've got the big players, we've got the core technologies. Let's bring this full circle and go back to that massive $3 trillion number we started with. How did they even come up with that? Well, the math is actually way simpler than you'd think.
This is it. This is the whole secret formula. It's just simple multiplication. You just take the current price of one coin, you figure out how many of those coins are actually out there in circulation, and you multiply those two numbers together. That's the market cap for that one coin. And the total market cap? You just do that for every single crypto and add it all up. That's it. And that's basically it. We've gone from that giant $3 trillion number all the way down to Bitcoin's dominance, the roles of Ethereum and the altcoins, and the essential tools that make it all work. What you have now is a framework, a mental map to actually understand what you're looking at. So the next time you pull up a crypto website, you're not just going to see a bunch of confusing names and numbers. You'll see the whole ecosystem. You'll see the titans, the challengers, the tools. You'll get it. So the only real question left is, now that you've got the map, where are you going to explore first?